We want to thank our generous sponsors who made today's program possible. And we would like your attention for the sponsors, because the sponsors, without them, none of this would be possible. The sponsors for today's program: the title sponsor, AECOM; the champion sponsors, Matt C., WSP, Parsons Binkerhoff. Yeah, go ahead, you can give them a clap if you want to. Also champion sponsors, Columbia Ventures, North American Properties, Cubic Transportation System, HNTP. Our advocate sponsors, Archer Western Construction, Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. Supporter sponsors, the Buckhead CID, yay, Cleveland Electric Company, Corporate Environmental Risk Management, Golder Associates, Perimeter CID, Wolpert Incorporated, Walton Communities. To start the program this morning, there will be a special presentation by MARTA's Chief of Staff, Rukia Thomas, to employees who demonstrated routine excellence in their service to MARTA. These employees were selected by their peers to receive this honor. Following Ms. Thomas's presentation, MARTA's board chairman, Robbie Ashe, will bring the opening remarks. Then we'll hear from the Honorable Kasim Reed, Mayor of Atlanta, who will provide a keynote address. At the conclusion of the mayor's remarks, we will hear from MARTA's General Manager and Chief Executive Officer, Keith T. Parker. He will present the State of MARTA address and send us off properly this evening. Mark Toro, the Managing Partner with North American Properties, he will have those closing remarks. Now that may sound like a lot but again, it is our intention to get you out of here in a timely fashion. And with my producers here behind the scenes, I think that will actually happen. Please enjoy the breakfast. Ms. Thomas, if you can come forward with a special presentation.
Well, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it. Thank you, Dave, very much. And I would also like to thank a special thanks to Mr. Garrick Edwards and Mr. Egbert Perry for your support of this event. Our special presentation today is being brought to you by our title sponsors, AECOM and Integral. MARTA could not enjoy continued success over the last 4 years without our dedicated employees. From day one, our GM and CEO, Keith Parker, charged every member of our team, from the front line to the leadership staff, to strive for routine excellence daily. Well, the following 7 honorees accepted that charge and were overwhelmingly voted as models of routine excellence throughout MARTA. I am going to ask each one to stand now as I call their name. Please hold your applause until I have called each name, please. Anne Marie Boyd. Sade Ladega. David Galloway. Kenneth Monk. Aretha Miller. Sean Coltrane. And for the last honoree, I would like for Mr. Parker and Mrs. Buckley to come to the front of the podium to assist us in honoring Mr. Noble Phillips. He is receiving our inaugural Harold Buckley Senior Service Award, named in his honor for the longest service board member in MARTA's history, and that's 30 years, y'all. Now let me tell you a quick note about Mr. Noble Phillips while they take pictures. He has over 26 years of service as an accountant in MARTA's Office of Accounting. Noble is known as Mr. Payroll throughout the authority due to his accuracy in performing his assigned duties and his exemplary customer service skills. Noble is always patient, courteous, and kind. He goes far beyond the call of duty, and there are no payroll problems he can't fix. He's the vision behind many process efficiencies implemented in the Office of Accounting and led to the final decision of the authority deciding against outsourcing payroll. Let's give Noble and all of our honorees a big applause. Thank you so much. Enjoy the program.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. And congratulations, Mr. Payroll. I'll see you a little bit later about my compensation. Robbie Ashe, a native of Atlanta, has served as the chairman of MARTA's board of directors for the last 4 years. Robbie has been a great friend and supporter of MARTA, always on the forefront of championing MARTA and the expanded transit in the Atlanta region. Ladies and gentlemen, Robbie Ashe.
Good morning, everyone. I am Robbie Ashe, and on behalf of my fellow MARTA board members, welcome to the 4th annual State of MARTA Breakfast. I want to start by recognizing the other members of the MARTA Board of Directors, and we'll ask them to stand, please. Particularly want to recognize the new members of the MARTA family, Alicia Ivey and Al Pond, representing Fulton County, and Thomas Worthy, who was recently appointed by Governor Deal. Please join me. Thank you. And next, I'd like to recognize the elected and appointed officials who are in the room. The list today is too long for me to read. I will say that the list 5 years ago was a lot shorter than it is now. So welcome. But if you're an elected or appointed official, would you please stand so that we can recognize you and thank you for your service. On behalf of my colleagues and the entire MARTA team, let me say the obvious. In 2017, the state of MARTA has never been stronger. You will hear a lot today about some incredible investments we're making in Wi-Fi, mobile ticketing, audio-visual upgrades, all to enhance the customer experience and to continue to ensure that we set the lead for transit system technology. You'll also hear about the continued work and success we've had managing our finances and operations, finishing yet another fiscal year with a significant surplus, enjoying more upgrades from Wall Street, and rebuilding our cash reserves to $250 million. Not too shabby for an agency that 5 years ago was projected to be insolvent this year. And the person leading that organizational change, the incredible turnaround of MARTA over the last 5 years, is our CEO and General Manager Keith Parker. When he came here, Mayor Reed's charge to Keith was to get rid of all the legitimate reasons why people were skeptical of doing business with MARTA. Keith would be the first to tell you we're still not perfect, but my, how far we've come. We can now say with confidence that going forward, MARTA will not just survive, but will thrive as an integral part of the future of Metro Atlanta. Our finances are strong. Businesses and residents every day are moving to be near MARTA. And every day we work under Keith's leadership to create an organization that embodies routine excellence in everything we do. And while Keith would also be the first person to tell you that those accomplishments have come because of the team he's assembled and the incredible effort put in by employees throughout the authority, like the ones we honored this morning, I want to take the opportunity to make sure you recognize the incredible leader he is. In this cradle of college football, knowing who the quarterback is and honoring the quarterback is certainly an important tradition. And virtually from day one, our quarterback, Keith Parker, has exceeded our expectations. To recognize and honor the turnabout Keith has brought to MARTA, in December, my fellow board members and I voted unanimously to extend Keith's contract at his request through 2021 and to include new incentives. To reward his loyalty and continued service. Going forward, Keith's challenge is that he has accomplished enough extraordinary things that they may somehow start to seem ordinary, to be taken for granted. But let me combat that for a moment, and let me focus on the 2016 highlight that was truly historic. In November 2016, 72% of Atlanta's voters chose to increase their investment in our system, voting to raise $2.5 billion so that MARTA can retailor the organic filaments that bind Atlanta together and transform how the city lives, works, and plays over the next generation. As with our victory in Clayton County in 2014, that overwhelming victory in Atlanta has set the stage for further expansion elsewhere in our system, work which we will continue to pursue in the 2017 General Assembly, working with our member jurisdictions. That historic opportunity Atlanta will now benefit from for a generation or more would not have come without tremendous leadership from a lot of people, many of whom are in the room today. From Governor Deal, who encouraged us and supported us focusing on enhancing local funding options, and the leadership of the Georgia House and Senate, including Speaker Ralston, Speaker Pro Tem Jones, Senator Brandon Beach, Chairman Tom Taylor, the representatives and senators we recognized earlier, we cannot say thank you enough. And while the list of people who need to be thanked for their work in that historic victory is too long for me to read, I cannot go on without discussing at least one more person. Our keynote speaker today is Atlanta's mayor. He is, I am very proud to say, both a friend and a mentor. Over the almost 2 decades now, when neither one of us had gray in our hair, that we've been working together and have been friends, he has taught me a number of valuable lessons, including how to take a punch and how to throw one. And without his resoluteness, his dedication to the calling of advancing Atlanta every day, his duty that lies nearest, this breakfast would be very different. Without Kasim Reed's leadership, MARTA doesn't get the referendum we just won in November. His willingness to stand and deliver on behalf of Atlanta, to insist, to even demand that Atlantans would receive the right to vote to expand MARTA in the city, regardless of reluctance or hesitation elsewhere, was what carried the day. There is a Latin expression that aptly summarizes Mayor Reed. Sic vos, non vobis. Thus we labor, but not for ourselves. It is that dedication to public service, even when the going is tough or controversial, that won the day for MARTA and for Atlanta in 2016. Mayor Reed, on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of my fellow Atlantans, thank you. Please join me in welcoming our mayor, Kasim Reed.
That was good, Robbie, man. Yes. Goodness gracious. Good morning. We're all gathered here today on this good, cold, clean morning with a room full of folks clearly dedicated to advancing MARTA, and we wouldn't want to be anywhere else today. It's my privilege to be here this morning to congratulate MARTA, its partners, and its customers on having such a historic year. On November 8th, as my friend Robbie Ashe, the chairman of MARTA's board, just said, The City of Atlanta residents voted to expand MARTA with a 72% majority. And just like the referendum I supported for MARTA in Clayton County in 2014, I believe the ripple effects of this watershed vote will be felt for decades. Not many folks know it, but the MARTA system that we have today, Keith, was actually supposed to go to the city of Seattle, Washington. And when Seattle, Washington voted no to public transportation, there was an opportunity that my predecessor, Mayor Sam Massell, and the business community and civic community grasped at that time. And that is how we got here today. And because of that courageous leadership, because of that thoughtfulness, because we came together at the time, MARTA's expansion will sharpen our competitive edge in national and global markets and make us even more compelling to businesses and people who are looking to move here. I also want to take a moment to talk about Keith Parker, although I doubt I can do a better job than Robbie. But I want to go back just 4 years ago to being in Speaker David Ralston's conference room, where there was legislation on the floor of the General Assembly that basically would have made the CEO of MARTA an administrative function. And Keith Parker had moved his family here to Atlanta, left a terrific opportunity where he was, had an excellent reputation across the board. And we said, Mr. Speaker, if you pass this bill and make the job of CEO of MARTA purely administrative, I don't think that you're going to keep a talented person like Keith Parker. And Keith Parker's leadership in partnership with the members of the General Assembly is more than a turnaround story. He is one of the best leaders in transportation, not only in the United States of America, but nationally, and he deserves a huge round of applause today. You gotta hug your own, lift up your own. And I believe that it is because of this outstanding board, and because of their leader, and because of each and every employee at MARTA, that you've had 4 balanced budgets for an organization with more than $900 million a year in revenue, always in the black, growing cash reserves, improving its bond rating because of this team. I also want to thank my former colleagues at the Georgia State Capitol, men like Calvin Smyrie, women like Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones, and of course, Speaker David Ralston, who saw what I saw in Keith Parker and took that bill that was hot that year and put it aside. I want to thank individuals like Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, and of course, Governor Nathan Deal, who has done as much for transportation as any governor in modern times. And I want to thank Russell McMurray, the outstanding leader of GDOT, for his leadership. I'm probably going to get Russ in trouble right now, but we were chatting before we started. And he said, Mayor, I know you know it. He said, but our region is running so strongly right now that MARTA is going to become an essential part of its future as long as businesses continue to demand it. Please give that group of individuals a warm round of applause. They deserve it. I came to thank them. And I also want to give a shout out to the MARTA Army and all the volunteers and activists out there on social media who do such a great job beating the drum for transit in our community. And most importantly, our MARTA employees on the front line. Let's just lift those folks up. They deserve it. Those individuals bring a grassroots desire for quality transit to the street. But I'll tell you the most compelling argument that I've seen for MARTA occurred about 25 minutes ago When I was headed into breakfast this morning, I came down Marietta Street, and I was in my car driving very slowly, Dave. I left the house at 6:30, like everybody else. But I tell you this, there was a MARTA stop on Marietta Street that had as diverse a group of riders waiting to ride a MARTA bus as I have seen since I have been mayor of Atlanta. That is confidence. There were 20 people at this bus stop, and I'm telling you, it could have been a Benetton card. I mean, there were white folks and black folks. There was 2 Asian dudes. That's where MARTA's going. That's what Keith Parker and MARTA's board have done. They have changed the face of this organization and made people believe in it again. With MARTA, we will build the spine of our infrastructure and ignite our future. We all remember this year, just the other day, I was over at Centennial Olympic Park, and we were celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Centennial Olympics. Just think about it. No MARTA, no Centennial Olympic Games. No Centennial Olympic Games, no $70 billion in investment in Atlanta and in the metro region that has catapulted the city of Atlanta to the center of the economy, not just in the city of Atlanta and the state, but throughout the Southeast. So it's appropriate that the theme of this breakfast is today's MARTA means more. It means more buses. It means more trains. It means more stations. And that translates to more service reaching more people who need it every day. But there's another aspect to MARTA that we need to talk about. It means that woman or man who used to be in Clayton County, where they couldn't even get a bus to jobs in other parts of the region, get a fair shot and a fair shake. There's a dad who's able to do a better job at supporting his family with dignity because he can catch a bus in Clayton County and get to a job at the Marriott Marquis or one of the downtown hotels. You see, we should never forget that the work that we do, while most of us handle it at the most lofty levels, are really changing the lives of everyday folks. And I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago, Keith, with a general, and he said the issue of equity and fairness is no longer a social issue for the United States of America anymore. He said the issues of equity and fairness and connectivity are now key to our security network in the United States. He said if you look around the world at cities that have populations that are quarantined off, such as those that occurred in Paris or Brussels, and where those individuals can't connect to the rest of the city, that represents an asymmetrical threat to safety and security, because when people don't feel connected or apart, they often lash out and resent. So while we're here to celebrate today, I want to talk about why it is so important that we succeed at this mission. The work that we're going to do over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years today will make sure that our transit system has among the 5 largest transit expansions in the United States. This comes at a fortuitous time when global capital is looking to invest in cities that value transit and are taking on infrastructure challenges. Keith, I don't know who on your staff came up with it, but when we were working to expand MARTA, the best advertisement I ever saw, Robbie, had a picture of Paris's train system, a picture of London's train system, a picture of New York's train system, and then a picture of MARTA's train system, which looked like a stick figure. It was just 2 dudes. Look at where we are right now, though. We're embarking on an expansion. It's going to be the biggest expansion since the system started. we've decided that we're going to be in the future business in the city of Atlanta. And because we decided to be in the future business, not be small, and to think about the next 5, 10, and 50 years, the business community, Russell, has responded. Within the last 24 months, Hala can tell you, 15 Fortune 500 businesses have either opened a national or regional headquarters and are moving employees into the city of Atlanta by the thousands. Now, I'm not talking, that deserves a, now, I'm not talking about some abstract business. I'm in almost every meeting on economic development in the city of Atlanta. When Richard Dugas made the decision to move Pulte Group to the city of Atlanta, he was talking about MARTA. Even outside of the city of Atlanta, when State Farm decided they were building an 8,000-person campus, they were thinking about MARTA. When Mercedes-Benz moved their headquarters to Sandy Springs, they wanted to be next to MARTA. And when Bill Nudie and I were meeting about moving 5,000 NCR employees, he said, Mayor, you've got to find me someplace that is right near MARTA. And what this is doing is removing Republican and Democrat partisan politics out of the conversation about MARTA, because every politician worth their salt cares about jobs. And that's what people care about. It's also terrific for the economy. Just yesterday, Forbes magazine came out with an article that said that the city of Atlanta is among the 5 best places if you're looking to build a future. That really is about the decisions that we're making right here, right now. We're up 35,000 net new jobs in the city of Atlanta since January 4, 2010. Population in the city of Atlanta is up 40,000. Real estate values in the city of Atlanta are now at 2008 levels, so we have helped people recover on the biggest investment they have. MARTA is a part of that story through and through. So what are we getting ready to do right now? What we're getting ready to do is embark on an expansion that's going to send a signal to the rest of the country. And the signal that we're sending to the rest of the country is very clear, that the city of Atlanta and the metropolitan Atlanta region and the state of Georgia, with a GDP in our region of $305 billion, that we're going to be the business and cultural center of the Southeast, undisputed. And I don't know about you, but we're doing it with the support of the public. We passed the Renew Atlanta bond for $250 million in infrastructure investment with 86 and 88% of the vote. We passed a MARTA expansion with 72% of the vote. We passed another referendum for infrastructure investment with 68% of the vote. We signed a 20-year deal with Delta Airlines for $6 billion in capital improvements at Hartsfield-Jackson that will power this economy with the unanimous support of the board of Delta, which happens to be the largest private employer in the state. When you look around, I challenge you to go up in any building that's 10 stories or more. The cranes tell the story. The official bird of the city of Atlanta is the construction crane, and they are everywhere. They're telling the story. And so I came this way today to say thank you, to let you know as the mayor of the capital city of the state of Georgia that I am personally grateful to all of you. But I hope that you all got an awful lot of rest over the holidays, because the things that we're getting ready to do in this region, in this city, and in this state will allow all of us to be a part of some of the most exciting times that we've ever been through. As mayor of the city, I have wonderful opportunities to sit with men like Andrew Young and Billy Payne. And I will tell you that I love sitting with them as they regale me with stories of how they flew around the world on Delta Airlines with people laughing at them saying that Atlanta should win the Centennial Olympics. But the decision that we have to make is a different decision. The decision we have to make today, Robbie, is what's going to be our story? See, I've sat with Sam Massell when he talks about how the MARTA referendum passed by less than 1,000 votes. But Russ, what's going to be our story? Our story is that we had the biggest expansion of MARTA in its history and put Atlanta on a path towards having real and authentic transit. But I want you to be inspired. I don't want you to get tired. And I want all of us in all of our centers of influence to carry the word of MARTA as an essential element of our economic future and success to all parts of the region and the state, and to lift MARTA up out of politics so that it can help us drive an economy that assures our dominance in this region, in this state, and in the United States of America. And in case you needed a bit of inspiration, last night I was up, Keith, thinking about what I would share with you today. And 50 years ago, on the campus of Rice University in Houston on a hot day, one of the greatest speeches that has been given in the United States by President Kennedy was given on that day. It was a speech to the moon. I'm not going to quote the typical parts that people are talking about. I'm going to quote the part that I think relates to this room. And I hope that it moves you the way that it moves me. It says this: "But if I were to say, my fellow citizens, that we shall send a man to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of a football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest switch watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival, on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that of the temperature of the sun, and do all of this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold." On the day that President Kennedy gave that speech, he was proposing $5.4 billion in investment into the space program. 50 years later, we're proposing $2.5 billion, which when matched by our federal partners could be $4.4 or $5 billion. You all, we're not sending a person to the moon, but we are changing the life of the region. We are changing the life of the state, and we are changing the lives of people who we may never meet or never know. So let's do it right, and let's do it first, and let's be bold and ask for God's blessings. Thank you.
Mayor Kasim Reed. Thank you, Mayor. MARTA has been transformed, and the impact of the Atlanta region has been exciting to watch and to cover. We truly appreciate all that you do for the city of Atlanta. Sig vos non votis. As Mr. Parker comes to the stage, I would like to take this opportunity to say a few words about him. He is being hailed as the man who transformed MARTA. A native of Virginia, Keith has helmed transit agencies across the nation, from Charlotte, North Carolina to San Antonio, Texas. Along the way, he has earned accolades for leadership. Most recently, he was named to the Governing Magazine's top 8 public officials. Earlier this year, President Barack Obama appointed him to the National Infrastructure Advisory Council. Mr. Parker and his team have done yeoman's job in helping to change the perception of MARTA, and all of his hard work and efforts are greatly appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Keith Parker, General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of MARTA, the country's 9th largest transit agency.
Wow, I almost feel like I'm at my funeral. I've never had people say this many nice things about me. And I'm going to say introductions to lots of folks, but I want to start off with my wife, who's here, Dawn Parker. This is her first time attending. And, my girls are both out of school today, and I invited them to come as well, but hearing Dad speak at 7 o'clock in the morning just wasn't worth getting out of bed. So I appreciate all you've said about me, but humility always comes back when I go home. But this is an historic time for us. I truly want to thank so many folks who've helped put this together. This is our 4th annual State of MARTA. The first couple were right at our corporate headquarters, and we were able to fit everybody in there. We did it nice, but I think we're taking it up to a different level, and each year seems to get a little bit better. A few more elected officials come in, and a bit more press gives us coverage. And so I thank all the folks who've helped put this together, led by Rukia Thomas, Rhonda Allen, Alyssa Jackson, and so many others. Thank you for your efforts. Appreciate you. So 2 particular folks I wanted to recognize. First, Mayor Reed, the leadership, the council, the pats on the back when necessary, and the occasional kick in the rear when warranted. All those things I much appreciate, because those things for me as a leader help make me a better leader and help make me an even better spokesperson for what we do as a transit system. And I certainly want to thank Robbie Ashe and the entire MARTA board. When I came in, we're under the leadership of Fred Daniels, and Fred is a budget hawk, an absolute stalwart when it comes to the numbers, and he was exactly what we needed when I came in with our team. And Fred succeeded Jim Durrett, who helped lead MARTA through a period of significant turbulence, and both were succeeded by Robbie Ashe. And under Robbie, we've had tremendous growth, but one of the reasons why we've had that growth is that we've had a board that's been unified. I think I'm the only general manager in the country who can say that under 4 years of major initiatives and a number of big projects and big decisions that needed to be made, we've only had 1 vote that wasn't unanimous. And it wasn't because the folks don't have vigorous debate, it's because they have the vigorous debate, but once the play is called, the team runs with it. And I appreciate the quarterback analogy, because as your quarterback, if we don't know what the coaching staff's doing, and that's what I see as many of you are on the board, if the coaching staff is not unified, we really can't go out there and run the play. So thank you, MARTA Board of Directors, for all you've done. So I'm going to chat with you, there she is, Saba Long, who also is a big part of our team, is going to help me do our presentation today. And if those of you have seen me present, I like showing a lot of pretty pictures. So we'll be talking a little bit about the history of MARTA. We'll talk a bit about sort of how we got here, then spend some time about the 2016 and some accomplishments we had, but then close out with what we have planned for 2017 and beyond. So with that, let me get started. Again, lots of pretty pictures, so if you had some phone calls to make and don't want to hear about the history, now would be a time to go do that. So Atlanta's always been a big transportation town. It began during the pre-Civil War periods and has continued on up to this day. Mayor Reed mentions major investments. This is a city that has made smart, big investments. Smart, big investments, including one of the early rail pioneers, and this was a true form of early rail that effectively lined up against a post, and the rail cars moved at a speed slightly slower than the horse-drawn carriages. By the early 1920s or so, the first streetcars were beginning to be formed in the city, and we saw massive ridership increases. And the streetcar system was helping to define the neighborhoods that would make Atlanta one of the real spectacular cities in the early 1900s. Moving forward, just like the rest of the country, the automobile was beginning to take its prominence over other forms of transportation, and Atlanta followed suit. But by 1949, we were seeing a real transition from the streetcar into what today is one of the best interstate systems. And this is an early picture of the downtown connector. But even back then, people who were visionaries were seeing the benefits and touting the benefits of investments in major transportation projects. In a move made by Mayor Mims all the way back in 1926, where he set aside 300 acres of land, which would eventually become the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, Atlantans have always seen the need to invest in transportation. That airport, of course, helped signal the path forward and establish Atlanta away from other prominent southern cities at the time of Birmingham and Richmond, Virginia. Those cities did not make those types of investments, and we've seen how Atlanta has far exceeded those cities in terms of moving towards becoming a truly international place. The 60s were an incredible time in so many different ways, and it was then that the major talk about a regional public transportation system began to really take form. And in those conversations, there was much talk about what this system would look like. Of course, people looked at New York and looked at Boston and so forth, and they were thinking, well, why can't Atlanta have that type of investment? So there were studies that were done by the Regional Commission. There were studies undertaken by the General Assembly, and each one of them showed some real promise. This is a picture of the Pond City Market. Now, most people would not believe that as far back as 66 years ago, people were talking about investment along inside the city of Atlanta with rail that would connect what they weren't even calling it the Beltline then, but that would be a train along the Beltline. Other efforts were undertaken by the Georgia General Assembly, including looking at creating a regional transit system that would include the 5 major counties, city of Atlanta, but every one of those efforts failed. It was until 11 years later that this image came up that would show a significant rail investment throughout the Atlanta region connecting all the major counties, but it too failed. In 1965, finally, some relief. The Georgia General Assembly passed the MARTA Act. And this was a major accomplishment because the MARTA Act established the 5 counties as a regional transportation system, but it had a couple of major flaws. The most significant, it had no money attached to it. And it had no eminent domain. So effectively what we had at that point was a wonderful piece of paper outlining a regional transit system, but no real teeth that would be necessary. Several more efforts during the late 60s would emerge to bring a true regional transportation system. Each one of them got good starts, but ultimately failed. Finally, 1971, with a yes vote that would include the counties of Fulton and DeKalb and the city of Atlanta, we had the beginnings of funding for the MARTA system. But it too had its setbacks. Clayton County voted against it. Gwinnett County voted against it. Cobb didn't even bother to vote. And even where it passed in Fulton County, the Fulton County folks asked for a recount. And after the recount, it was confirmed that by a number of 471 votes, Mayor, by 471 votes, the act passed. And that was the beginning of the transit system that you see today. So we start to move from the legislation, from getting the funding, moving from dream to reality. And during those early years, there was still much consternation about should MARTA be a rail system. In fact, a group of business leaders took out full-page ads in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution lobbying against MARTA becoming a subway system. But despite those setbacks, the agency moved forward and, as the mayor mentioned, was able to convince the Federal Transit Administration to grant MARTA 80% funding to build its subway system. Unheard of numbers today. So let me give you that again. 80% funding to build the MARTA rail system. Today, if you get 50%, you're very fortunate. And we're thankful, and we actually did a story about the folks out in Seattle, very thankful to the people in Seattle for turning those dollars away to what would ultimately become the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit System. These are nice images of construction that were happening at 5 points back in 1975 when construction first began. By 1979, we were ready to open the first east-west lines, and then we were able to see all of it come to fruition at the Avondale station. And you'll see that little fella there. Now, some people have opined that that might be Bob Dallas waiting for that first train to arrive at the Avondale station. Now, only Bob and his parents can confirm that, though. So moving into the 80s, Atlanta the MARTA system had some momentum, and we were growing. By 1981-82, the north-south construction began to expand. And we were doing even more in terms of generating economic benefit, generating economic activity, and drawing more people to the transit system's potential. So with that growth, we saw major developers in the area begin to support MARTA. John Portman said that the interstate system and MARTA in combination would make Atlanta a powerhouse. John Whelan said that the MARTA system was making residential growth an even more powerful tool in the city and in the region. And very importantly, probably some would argue most importantly, in 1988, we extended MARTA service to the airport, and what was to become the most successful airport transit service anywhere in the country. This $500 million investment gave Atlanta even more momentum. So as you think about where Atlanta was right at that time, you had the world's busiest airport, an interstate system that was quite vibrant, a transit system that was growing in terms of ridership and prestige and what have you. So a great deal of momentum was happening, but that wasn't enough for the city leaders. They said, what do we want to do next? We want to become an international city. So Atlanta did have the audacity to go against Toronto, Canada, and Athens, Greece, to challenge them for the 1996 Olympics, and were successful. And one of the unique things about those Olympic Games, it was the first time that with the price of a ticket of admission, you got access to the MARTA system. You got access to public transportation. And we were very successful. Over 600 MARTA employees volunteered for the Games. We carried 25 million people in 17 days, a number unprecedented for our system. And with that momentum, MARTA had reached a new level in terms of national and even international prestige. But something happened along the way that was a bit disconcerting. That incredible momentum that was seen nationally and internationally was not felt here in the region itself. That despite all those accolades and all those accomplishments, the agency actually began to go down. In a 10-year period from 1996 to 2006, ridership actually began to plummet. And by the time when we hit the recession of the mid-2000s and later, MARTA was in a downward spiral that took much to stop. That downward spiral included, as I mentioned, losses in ridership, but just as importantly, a great deal of loss in the perception of how the public viewed the transit system. We had lower than ever customer service numbers. We saw crime rates that, while never a dangerous system, people felt uncomfortable on the transit system. So when me and my team came on board in December of 2012, this was a place that was regarded as the worst transit system in the country. That because of the geopolitical, the funding issues, the fact that many of our folks had not seen raises in many years, that this transit system was one that some thought would not even survive the next few years. But I'm pleased to report, and as the mayor mentioned, we've had a tremendous opportunity to improve the relationship with the General Assembly, improve our public perception numbers, and improve the overall way we do business. So as we move to the 2017 year and beyond, let me tell you a little bit about what we were able to accomplish in 2016. We focused primarily on how we could improve the funding of the system. And through the leadership of Mayor Reed, with Robbie Ashe, many of you who are here from the General Assembly, we proposed the biggest MARTA bill in history in terms of expansion, an $8 billion effort to bring MARTA in throughout Fulton, DeKalb County, City of Atlanta. But as you can see from the headline, the MARTA bill was dead. I think Mayor Reed described the MARTA bill as Lazarus, that he was able to come from death's door and be resurrected. And those of you who helped work to reinvigorate that bill, many of you described it as folks who had the faith of a mustard seed. Today, we're pleased to say that that bill was resurrected and was overwhelmingly passed by the General Assembly. And we'll talk more later about what that meant in terms of the new investment that Atlanta will see. But I always talk about the money. The money to MARTA is very important. Again, when I started in December 2012, my first meeting was with our then CFO, who said, Keith, let me show you a chart that the folks from KPMG had put together. He said, KPMG are projecting that we will lose between $25 and $33 million a year until we're fiscally bankrupt around 2017. Our employees have only had one raise in the last 10 years. Our ridership is plummeting. The public perception of the agency is at the lowest point really since its start. So congratulations on the new job and welcome to Atlanta. I'm pleased to say that we have turned around those fiscal fortunes, and that that $35 million deficit that we saw in 2011, we were able to turn around to a $35 million surplus by fiscal 14. And just this past year, the $33 million projected deficit from fiscal 12, we had a $38 million surplus to close out this year. So where the folks at KPMG projected the red line that we would be at zero, as I stand here before you today, where we are is the green line, where we have about $250 million in our budget reserves. So a pretty good turnaround. We've done it by making good fiscal use of our funds. And the folks at Wall Street have recognized it. For yet another year, we've seen a credit rating upgrade. With that most recent increase, we're able to go out and sell some debt that will save our transit system and the taxpayers of this area $48 million over the next 18 years. We haven't raised fares for 5 years. We have invested back in our employees with big merit increases this year based upon performance. And we're going to be investing even more in giving back to the customers with more and better MARTA. We also promised last year at the State of MARTA that we would improve and make and fulfill all the promises of to the folks in Clayton County that we made when those folks passed the MARTA measure with a 74% approval rate, the highest rate of any transit initiative in the country during that time. And we've honored that promise. We've expanded bus service, we have placed new benches and shelters, and very importantly, we opened up our police precinct in Clayton as we promised to do. And speaking of police, one of the things we promised during last year's MARTA was that we would continue to make this system one of the safest in the entire world. Our Ride with Respect program, which calls for zero tolerance of uncivil behavior on our transit system, has continued to work wonders for us. We've suspended over 9,000 people who've misbehaved on MARTA in some form or fashion. And of those 9,000, a very small percentage have been repeat offenders. And because of those efforts, we've seen our crime numbers become amongst the best in the nation. This is a chart that compares MARTA with the other larger transit systems in the country, and you'll see we are second from the top in terms of the fewest number of Part 1 crimes. And even with those 9,000 suspensions off of the transit systems, we have not had a single complaint of racial profiling or civil rights complaints because our officers have been trained to treat people with dignity even when they are not behaving in the most dignified way. We'll continue to make these investments in law enforcement with a mobile command center that you'll see rolling out in the next few months, investments with our K-9 unit, and more police patrols with our Step On and Step Off program. And we'll continue our transparency. Our MARTA officers are all being outfitted with body cams to increase and restore even more trust with the community. And we will have cameras on every train and every bus. In fact, I'm pleased to announce, as of just a few months ago, every bus, every train, all the rail platforms now have cameras. We're going to start a campaign where I will be telling folks the dumbest place in which to commit a crime in the entire Atlanta region will be on a MARTA bus or train, because we will have you on tape. We also promised to make our Breeze system more secure, and we've introduced the new almost fraud-proof Breeze system. What's also important about this is that our partners at Greta, at Gwinnett, and in Cobb can also make access of this new Breeze card. This is rolled out very effectively and will continue to make major improvements. But the most exciting of the technology projects that we are here to report is the great progress we've made on our mobile ticketing program. A year ago, I told you we were going to have the best mobile ticketing technology anywhere in the country. And just later this month, we'll be signing a contract that will begin full implementation so that you'll be able to take your cell phone, buy anything from a one-pass ride to an annual pass, never having to get in line, and then use that cell phone to get on our buses, go through all of our gates, and attend many of the events that are making Atlanta one of the big attractors in the entire country. So later this month, the deal gets signed, implementation a little bit further on in the year. We promised Wi-Fi connectivity, and in just a couple of weeks, every single bus in the MARTA system will be outfitted with Wi-Fi connectivity. And we've started construction to connect our subway system. So you'll be able to make phone calls and access Wi-Fi service while you're at the Dome, while you're at Peachtree Center, and while you are at 5 Points. Eventually, we'll spread it out to the entire system so that we'll be one of the most connected systems anywhere in the world. More amenities. Someone mentioned to me, do you have any exciting bathroom announcements this year? Those who remember some of our previous State of MARTA addresses, they remember that we were the first system in the United States to implement urine detection systems. So I hope you enjoyed your breakfast. But yeah, we used to have a significant problem. All subway systems have a significant problem with people who decide to use their elevators as bathrooms. So we wanted to see if there was a technological way to go after this. So we were the first system in North America, and one of the first in the world, to implement urine detection devices in some of our elevators. And these devices, if you were to release in that elevator and splash was detected, the doors would close and a strobe light would come on, and it would notify our police officers to come and arrest you. And of course, this generated national headlines, and we were interviewed by the BBC and Good Morning America and CNN and all those groups. And one of the headlines that came out of it was MARTA, AICP. And MARTA looking out for number one. So. And as Mayor Reed and some others mentioned, we've won a few awards. The Governing Magazine Award was a real honor for me. But winning Elevator Magazine's Innovation of the Year, that's at the top. Okay, so I digress about bathrooms again. But we're the first in the country to have you got to go back, we're not quite finished with bathrooms, to have what we call smarter bathrooms. And these smarter bathrooms are, as the name implies, so instead of having a person who has to stand there and open the door for you to come into to go into our restrooms, we now have it all automated. So you go in the restroom, you have a certain amount of time to take care of your business. If you take too long, the restroom will ask you, are you okay? And if say you need help, the restroom can actually call the authorities for you or call an ambulance and that sort of thing. We have started these in a couple of places and plan to expand this program potentially system-wide. It saves us money, makes for more convenience, and gives me another talking point at the state of MARTA. So another thing we promised was to continue the advancement of our transit-oriented development program, and we are pleased to say that, as Mayor Reed mentioned, State Farm announced just a little more than 2 years ago that they were building a major complex at our Dunwoody station, 2.2 million square feet of office. Literally, you can walk from the State Farm door to the MARTA platform in less than 1 minute. And that is just a piece of the TODs that we're beginning to see. We broke ground on 2 major TODs this year, the transit-oriented development at the Edgewood Candler Park station that we're calling Spoke, and at the Avondale station that we're calling E.Co. You see beautiful renderings, and these facilities are under construction, and we anticipate having them fully up and running again within the next year. We'll continue to make other major connections with other partners. We signed a historic deal with Lyft earlier this year, and we're very thrilled to work with the city's bike program, where we will have the city's bikes inside MARTA stations located throughout the city of Atlanta. And we're continuing to make MARTA more than the traditional train station. Now, would you buy fruit from this guy? So at our 5 Point stations and several others, we've partnered with local farmers to bring fresh produce in these transit stations. So in addition to being able to catch a train, you'll be able to take advantage of great art. I'm pleased to report that our board of directors unanimously passed and endorsed my recommendation that we restore the MARTA art program, that you will now be able to see great performance and stationary art through much of our system. We signed a historic deal with Soccer in the Streets and the Arthur Blank Foundation that we will have the world's first soccer stadium inside a train station. Soccer in the Streets has begun over the last few weeks, and just as important as the tournaments for the adults, we've made it such that kids coming out of the Vine City area and other places from around the city have access to this wonderful new amenity. And just to close things out, we were able to partner with Pianos for Peace and had these beautiful pianos laid out in many of our transit stations throughout the system. So with all those incredible accomplishments of 2016, I do want to start transitioning to 2017 and mention to you what we have planned. And while definitely the item that has our major focus is getting the referendum initiatives moved forward, we do want to talk about a few other things that we have planned. First, the biggest capital program in the history of MARTA is the replacement of all of our trains. This will cost us close to $1 billion when all said and done, but within the next 5 to 10 years, we will be replacing every train in our fleet with new state-of-the-art vehicles. We also will be beginning installation later this year of new signage throughout our entire system. Many of the signs were here back in 1979 when the MARTA subway system first formed. These new signs, which are being paid for by a state grant, will be HD, accessible to Amber Alerts and the Weather Channel, so that you'll be able to know exactly what's going on whenever you're in our train stations. We'll continue to break ground on more developments. Thank you, that one person who cared. With more transit-oriented developments, including the Chamblee station. And MARTA will continue to be a major player with sporting events and other special events that come to Atlanta. Just a couple of weeks ago, with the SEC Football Championship, we carried hundreds of thousands of people. Tens of thousands of those folks came to use MARTA to get to the football game. And then in just the next few years, of course, with the Super Bowl, the Final Four, the national football, the college football championship, MARTA will be a major player in getting all those folks around. Our airport service will continue to be one that's the best in the country, and I'm pleased to announce that we will be making a $10 million improvement to make that transit station one of the very best in the entire world. But now, let's talk a little bit about the city's initiatives. This is a map of all the things that will be happening over the next 40 years with the city. Right away, we're going to be doing some massive bus improvements, later night service, more frequency, and lots of new bus stop amenities, such as new shelters, new signs, new trash cans. And we'll be introducing a number of different types of buses into our fleet, everything from electric vehicles to the bendy buses, as they call them, and double-deckers and smaller vehicles that can maneuver around neighborhoods. The rail investment will be significant as well, including major improvements along our heavy rail system, but we will also be making light rail, introducing light rail to the city of Atlanta in the form of light rail along the Beltline and other locations. But the one I'm most excited about, that's good. So a transit component for the Beltline and again in other places. But the one I'm most excited about, and it touches on what the mayor mentioned about equity and the need for MARTA to be more than just a place for those who have things already. We want to be part of what makes Atlanta special. We want to be part of what links Atlanta together. So in just a few weeks, I will ask permission from the MARTA Board of Directors to start preliminary engineering and the initial planning phases of what we're calling the Link Southwest. This will be a light rail line that will connect the southwest area of Atlanta to the Beltline, to downtown, eventually over to the Peachtree MARTA station. And this will be the next generation of light rail, that a person sitting in their home in Cascade will be able to go on their cell phone, hit an icon that will dispatch a small vehicle that will pick them up off its regular route, drop them off at the new Greenbrier Mall transit station in the southwest area, where they were able to get on the Link light rail, take it through the Tyler Perry Studios along Campbellton Road, and eventually connecting again to the MARTA system, the Beltline, even to the downtown streetcar network. Why are we doing this? Because it makes a lot of sense. It creates opportunity in an area that some would argue has not had its share of opportunity. And it can be a signature project that will help the community build even greater trust in MARTA. And what I'm most excited about this project is that it's funded. Because of the work done by Mayor Reed and the rest of the the City Council and eventually the voters, this is one of the projects that we can spend that $2.5 billion that will be accumulated over the next 40 years. This is one of those projects that we think will help revolutionize the way we do public transportation here in the city. That's a project that's funded. And I want to close by mentioning to you that we have many more aspirations. The city took its step. So there will be light rail in the city. There will be much new bus service. But there are major projects that have yet to be funded. I'm going to show you a video in just a second about those projects. 4 major projects, only one of which, the Clayton County extension, has money. So when the General Assembly convenes in a few weeks, or actually next week, one of the things that we will be back and asking for is an opportunity to fund some of these projects. These are projects, once built, will have a true major and significant impact on the way our region does business. MARTA has come a long way. We've got a long way to go. I really appreciate all the kind comments. So we'll close out on this video before bringing Mark Toro up. And thank you, folks. Enjoy the show.
First, the Clifton Corridor expansion. Continuing to the I-20 East heavy rail expansion. Now the next expansion line. Now on to Clayton County. And finally, Connect 400. This could be your future.
Wow, that's some exciting news. Give Mr. Parker another hand, please. To give our closing remarks, if we could please have Mr. Toro come to the stage, please.
Hi, I'm Mark Toro. I've got a busy day. We've got a project under construction in Alpharetta called the Hotel. I'm here in person. We'll try that again. Yeah, I'm Mark Toro. I've got a busy day. We've got a project under construction in Alpharetta called the Hotel at Avalon. First stop is Architect's Office, Cooper Carey downtown, and I'm going to take MARTA. Today I'm coming from Colony Square, so it's a great opportunity to cut through Woodruff Art Center and see what's going on at the High. So I'm headed down to Cooper Carey Architects. They're working on a big project where we're doing in Alpharetta. It's the Hotel at Avalon. We've arrived at Peachtree Center Station. First stop is their office to work on some material selections. So we're wrapped up here and headed to Avalon to check out construction progress. So my best shot at getting to Avalon at this time of day is the red line to North Springs and then connect with Uber for my last mile connectivity. Going to Avalon like I am now, I'm invariably going to take MARTA to avoid the traffic. I've got a 2-year-old Tesla that probably has less than 10,000 miles on it. I'm kind of a car guy, but you can keep it because I'm not going to sit in traffic anymore. So we're leaving Medical Center. I can call Uber and they'll be waiting for me when I get to North Springs. Here we are at North Springs in North Fulton. Uber's waiting for me and off we'll go to Avalon. Less than 50 minutes door to door, Cooper Carey to Alpharetta. So here we are in the site of the second phase of Avalon and the Hotel at Avalon beyond us. 330-room hotel with a conference center. Immediately beyond that conference center is where there will be a MARTA station someday. So less than 50 minutes ago, I was at Cooper Carey downtown. Now I'm on our construction site at Avalon. That's how I use MARTA. How do you MARTA? That is how I MARTA. And thanks to Mayor Reed and Keith Parker and their leadership, being a MARTA rider is a really good thing. It's a great time to be a transit user in Metro Atlanta. It's a great time for all of Metro Atlanta. With our recent victory at the ballot box, we have much to celebrate. But we have much to do to advance Metro Atlanta. We've taken the first step in the city, but the life of Metro Atlanta depends on us going much, much further. I emphasize Metro Atlanta because that is who we are. We're not Ackworth, Conyers, McDonough, or Douglasville, but that may be how many of us see ourselves. It's a phenomenon I first witnessed when I moved to East Cobb in 1981, and then in the 90s doing zoning work in Gwinnett County, and then in the early 2000s working in South Fulton. It is parochialism, simply defined as a limited or narrow outlook, especially focused on a local area, narrow-mindedness. And it is this parochial mindset that dismisses the notion that we're all part of Metro Atlanta. Now, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't all be proud of our communities, but we're all members of a broader community, our neighborhood, our city, a region, state, county, country, and we're all citizens of the world. And it is this worldview of Atlanta that has made us the envy of the Southeast. It has enabled us to compete on the world stage, creating an economic engine that feeds all of us. But our parochial mindset has created a division between Metro Atlanta and our cities and counties. A division that has never been more vividly exhibited than the recent discussion of MARTA's expansion. During the last legislative session, State Senator Brandon Beach asked me to address the Senate Transportation Committee. He had proposed a bill that would allow a referendum for a half-penny sales tax increase in Fulton and DeKalb counties to expand MARTA. I joined Keith Parker, MARTA Board Chair Robbie Ashe, and a number of community and business leaders to address the committee, and I was astonished by the proceedings. Notwithstanding a packed house of overwhelming support, it was apparent that the committee would not advance that bill, and it never made it to the Senate floor. These legislators effectively denied Fulton and DeKalb counties the opportunity to shape their region because they knew better. I left that day dejected and concerned for the future of Metro Atlanta. On the train on my way back home to Midtown, I thought, how can they not see that transit has become critical to the success of Metro Atlanta? Are they aware of the fact that State Farm and Mercedes, as the mayor pointed out, chose locations near transit, or the fact that NCR left Gwinnett and Athena Health left Alpharetta for Midtown's transit access? Why do they think that Pulte, Kaiser Permanente, GE, Equifax, Sage, WorldPay, Honeywell, Anthem, and a host of other businesses chose locations on or near transit stations and brought tens of thousands of jobs with them? Are they not concerned with our economic competitiveness? Do they not consider themselves responsible for the health of our region? It was then that the harsh reality came to me. Those who cling to the beliefs of an Atlanta that was cannot comprehend, accept, or even acknowledge the beliefs of those who are building the Atlanta that will be. In fact, they can't even acknowledge it's Metro Atlanta we're talking about because they're too busy being Ackworth, Conyers, McDonough, and Douglasville. Thankfully, through the hard work of Mayor Reed and a handful of brave legislators, a substitute bill was introduced which resulted in the overwhelming passage of a referendum to expand transit within the city. And next month, we'll be back before that same Senate committee, again proposing an expansion of transit, and again imploring our representatives to afford us a voice. We will ask them to put aside their parochialism and do what's best for the region. This is a call to action. If you know your state representative, reach out to him or her. If you don't, find out. Talk to your friends and your family. Be sure that they make their voices known. For it is, after all, the Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. And all we ask is that Fulton and DeKalb counties put it on the ballot and let their constituents vote. Then we'll go to work in Gwinnett and Cobb and beyond. Thank you.
You have your charge. Making MARTA more. Thank you, Mr. Toro. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Parker. It's 9:05. TV time, the producer would be yelling at me right now, we're 5 minutes over. But we thank you for the extra 5 minutes because this is worth it. Knowing how we will expand and improve Atlanta and the region. Thank you very much. On behalf of the staff of MARTA and the City of Atlanta, I'm Dave Huddleston. Have a good day.